Let's take a look at another page that we had started working on, the profile. And these were some, did we get that far? I don't believe so. Profile. No, I must be looking at a cached version. Inspect. Clear, blah, 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 blah. Settings. Show command, doc. Settings, theme, blah, 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 device, throttle, preference, theme, panel, balance console. Where do you clear DevTools? Or emulate, restore defaults, disable, saying rendering. Oh. Okay, there we go. If you do Shift Command R, right, it reloads the page, clearing out the cache, right? So I was looking at some of the from yesterday. Anyway, so this is where we left off yesterday, right? We did style it a little bit. We used our username, admin. We used some strong typing for the dates, some drop downs. So let's go back a little bit and keep working on some of this. So notice that if I click on the email, right? Obviously I can start typing, but one of the things that we introduced today is that we can give folks some idea of what it is that we want them to type, right? So let's go in the email, and in the email we can use things such as the placeholder. So the placeholder allows me to give like an example of what it is that we're expecting. So we're expecting something you to type like John or Alice at wonderland.com. Right? And this places like a grayed out piece of text that disappears when you actually start typing. Yes. Also, we took a look at that. If we add a label around this, actually, no. Let's take a look at first the title. If we look at the title here, we can provide maybe some guidance on what it is that we want them to type. Some documentation. Please provide your corporate email or something, right? And if you refresh and you hover over the email, notice that there it is. The tool type pops up and gives you an idea of what it is that we are expecting from you. We can also notice that if I click on the email text, nothing happens. But if I use label around this, right, I can increase the clickable area by providing a unique identifier that this is an email. And then referring to it with using the for attribute like email, right? So now if I refresh and I click on the email, notice that it grabs the text, it grabs the focus, even though that I'm not clicking on that particular area. Make sense? What else? The other thing that we required in the assignment is that all these forms should be responsive. That when you had enough space horizontally, the form should render from left to right, right? But when the screen was too small, it should switch over to rendering from top to bottom, right, vertically. So let's take a look at that. And if we go to go back to Bootstrap and we Bootstrap, there we go. If we go to documentation and search for forms, there it is. It'll give us a lot of examples on how to create forms and style them using the Bootstrap library. So if you scroll down a little bit, you'll find an example of these responsive forms that behave differently depending on the size of the screen. Let me see, where are you? Okay, so here's an example. So here's a form that renders from left to right, right? Renders from left to right, but if the screen becomes too small, it won't work. Wait, what? Okay, there it is. Notice that it's switched from being horizontal, it's switched to being vertical, right? And the way to do that is through the use of columns. See that? A row at the top and the outer one, just like we did, right? We used a row and columns. Remember that? Right? So basically, the each element will be in a row, where the label will be in a small column and the input field will be in a big column. Yes? And as it gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, it switch, right? It removes the behavior. Notice that the default behavior is to always behave like this. Right? Always behave like a block, right? The label is taking up the entire width. The input field is also taking the entire width. See that? That's the default behavior. Okay. We want to switch it so that it renders horizontally and then switches to the default behavior. Make sense? Right. So to do that, Bootstrap uses the grid system, and the grid system works as follows. You have the row, and you have multiple columns, right? So we talked about the columns also having relative sizes, yes? That it breaks up the entire page into 12 equal units. Make sense? So from looking at this particular div declares a row that has two columns. This first column, the label, and then this other column, that contains the input field. See that? All right. Now the first column, I know it's a column because notice that it has something column, right? And I know it has 2 units because it's -2. See that? Whereas the second one, this second column is 10 units wide, right? 10 plus 2 becomes 12. Everybody okay? Right. The only difference here, the new concept that we're introducing here, is that it has this weird little SM in there that we haven't talked about. Okay. Also notice that there's an SM here as well. See that? Right? That's what allows it to behave one way, horizontally one way, but then vertically in the next. Right? Let me explain. The Bootstrap declares different logical sizes for screen. Really large screen, right? So large screen, LG, medium size screen, MD, smaller size screen, SM, right? And then extra small screens, right? And what it does is that as you resize the screen, right, it triggers certain classes. It says, oh, I'm only going to use these classes for the really, really large screen. I'm only going to use these classes for the medium size, or these for small, or these for extra small. Make sense? Right? And for us to remember which is which, they name the classes appropriately. See that? See it says SM. That class is only applies for smaller screens and above. Right? Right. So column SM2 means that if the screen is at least this big or larger, the column SM applies. Right? Meaning that I'll split it up into 12 equal parts, right? And the first two will be 2, and the other will be 10, right? If it's smaller or bigger, yes, right? Anything less than small, these classes don't apply, right? So what happens? It reverts to the default behavior, which takes up the entire width. So it becomes vertical. That makes sense? Yep. That's what the SM means. So to achieve this, I'm just going to copy this. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to go back to my profile here. Oh, notice another thing. They all assume that they're inside of a form. You see that? That form is just, it doesn't have to be a form, right? It can be any div, any block element will work, right? Do not use forms, right? We won't use any of its default behavior. So I'm gonna just do it. I'm gonna copy this. I'm gonna copy this, and I'm gonna replace my username. So here's the class. Here's a username. and it's read only for because it's a username class. I'm going to keep that. I'm going to change the for. So this will be responsive username, and the ID will be for this one right here, and the value for the username will be Alice. Right. So the class just form control, not plain text. All right. Having done that, let's go back and refresh our profile. Okay. Notice that indeed now it's rendering from left to right horizontally, right? And as it gets bigger, when it notice that it's kind of changing. See that as it goes from large to medium to small. But if it's below small, right, it becomes vertical. See that, and it becomes responsive. Make sense? All right. So yeah, go and and apply these techniques for the for the login page, for the registration page, for the profile page, and have fun with it. All right. All right. Excellent. Thank you.